So I took this book with me to lunch. It was peak time, so the restaurant was crowded. I sat down by myself and ordered my food. The waiter told me it would take a while because they were so busy today. I said, "No problem, I'm not that hungry, I'll just read my book and wait." I turned the first page and began reading because it was a new book. The first story of this book today we're talking about was about 16 pages. It was not Tolstoy. After I finished the 16 pages, I felt cold sweat on my back, and I was kind of glad that I was surrounded by so many people because that book was chilling. It was scary, and I wouldn't want to read this book at home alone after midnight. Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today's video should be named If You Like Inside Number 9, the very famous TV series that has a lot of plot twist, short but thrilling. You should read this book. But then I think maybe it's not a good comparison because this author that we are talking about today had a more delicate and nuanced tone in terms of storytelling. The author's name is Shirley Jackson. The story that spooked me in the restaurant is called The Possibility of Evil. You can find this story in her short story collection called Dark Tales. According to literature critics and book editors, Jackson's work had huge influence to authors such as Stephen King and Susan Walters. I said thrilling and chilling in a way that it was not about blood or monsters or ghosts or spirits. It was about the void that happened in someone's life. A moment that gives you goosebumps. A moment that you realize something, some secrets or the very ugly truth of human beings I'm talking about. If you're into that, then this book and this author will be a great choice for you. As usual, I would love to give my first and simplest impression of this book. If you can see pictures in your mind when you were reading, sometimes I could. I'm not sure if everybody approached to a book in the same way, but if you can see pictures while you're reading in your mind, the images that this book brings would be a gloomy, dark, quiet town. You could almost hear strings of a violin playing in harmonious tone because each story was very short. You can finish reading when waiting for a train or a bus, but each story has its unique dark tone that at some point during reading, you will get a feeling that, oh wait, something is bigger behind these stories. They were not simply horror stories. I think Jackson's work belongs to a type that should be named, the more I think about it, the more scared I feel. Her setups are usually very simple. Family story, girlhood, adolescence, small town life, neighborhood, a vacation. The horror is buried deep down inside the plots and the conversation. According to her biography and some reviews from The New Yorker, where some of her work was first published, Jackson had a successful writing career, though her marriage was not exactly an ideal one. Her husband was unfaithful for a long time, and he controlled most of her income, even after a point that she made more money than he did. She also suffered from a distant relationship with her mother, and she had her own body image problem, which all combined led to depression, addiction to drugs and alcohol, and anxiety. But she had a long-lasting impact in American literature as her work was seen as a reflection of the collective consciousness of American society. When I picked up the book and start reading, I didn't know about her upbringing and her life story. But after reading that and after reading her biography, I think her personal experience was artfully reflected in all her work. She wrote in a delicate tone, as the desperation of human beings was built up, step by step, word by word, through the development of plots. She covered dark topics such as murder, abandonment, death, and jinx via stories of daily life. She wrote about family, town life, school, all the ordinary things that everybody would experience at some point in their life. But she left a lot of things unwritten, unsaid, left them for the readers to decide for themselves what exactly did you think happened in the story. You could have your own interpretation. To that extent, there was a Chinese saying that in classical traditional Chinese painting, the core spirit of a painting should have negative space, to leave blank on the page. Because black means it's up to be interpreted by the audience, that anything could happen in the void, and we leave everything to your imagination. And I think that's also the beauty of Jackson's work. She only drew a basic line for each story. There was people, there was plot, some plot, maybe not even the full plot, the whole process of the plot. And you could have multiple guesses of each story, what she was hinting and what did she mean by writing this. The story I read about at the beginning of this video, The Possibility of Evils, was about a woman who on surface looked very nice, polite, and well-educated and disciplined, though in fact she was an evil person who would write venomous, slander letters anonymously to all her neighbors. She loved to hurt people through spreading untrue gossip. There was a strong comparison of who she appeared to be and who she actually was when no one else was watching. In another story called The Lottery, which was probably one of her best-known work, Jackson took the readers to a village where they have this annual traditional lucky draw. But no one knows what the actual prize was until the very end of this story. And let me tell you, you don't want to win this lucky draw. When you find out the truth, I was told in a review of this story, because it was first published in the New Yorker, the audience was so appalled and angry by this story that a few hundred people wrote letters to her to complain about such a dark plot. And one of the best ones that I particularly like was all she said was yes. You could say it was a mysterious story or a haunting story because it was about someone who might, and I emphasize here might because Jackson never told us the full truth, someone might be able to predict the future. She didn't point out with specific words about what happened. There was no absolute truth of the story, but the readers could guess where it was going. She left something unsaid, which in return made it more scary, because a place of completely dark was always something worse than a monster, because the unknown and the uncertainty always worked, at least for me. There are also some videos on YouTube about the psychological thrilling impact of her story. I think it also has something to do with how Jackson approached to each story. She was a master of creating suspense that kept you waiting and guessing. Each time you turn the page, you have to tell yourself you need to keep calm and you need to be mentally prepared for the plot twist that's about to happen. Jackson showed you a clip of someone else's life, and she left the most violent part to your imagination. Think about it. If there's a murder, some author will probably write about the actual murder, how it happened, where's the blood, why she did it, who did it, how they did it. But Jackson will write about what happened before the murder and stop the story when the murder is actually going to happen, which brings this huge suspense and expectation for the readers to picture them in their head what is actually about to happen. Moreover, as what I think is the most special part about Jackson's work, is she brought in her female angle to story writing. As a woman, sometimes what's scarier was not blood, ghosts, or monsters. What's scarier was being left behind, being shut up, and being killed by strangers. And those violence hidden in the gender issue was absolutely horrifying to read, even till now, for me at least. My personal favorite was a story called Louisa, Please Come Home. A girl left her home and started a new life somewhere else. Her family was desperate to find her, their little girl. Only when they did find her, the readers began to understand why she wanted to live so bad and why she could never go back home. The protagonist of this story felt unheard, unseen, and actually nowhere to be, which I believe it was a way to fight back as what happened in the author's real life. Frankly, Louisa, Please Come Home is not a horror story. There's no bloody plot or murder or any crime happened, but it's chilling to your bone because it talks about how lonely it is as a woman growing up in a family that will never hear you, will never see you as a human being, which is absolutely fantastic, but it's also it's really hard to read. There's also a story called Jack the Ripper, named after the famous murderer. It was a story about how a guy could appear to be so nice, a gentleman with a beautiful family, but he could also do such evil things in the dark. There's also a story called The Good Wife. It was a perfect thriller story about marriage. And I think Netflix or Hulu or HBO should buy the story's copyright and adapt it into an actual movie. How a husband could completely manipulate his wife's entire life, and she had absolutely no way to fight back because she was caged in a trap called marriage. As a comparison, there was a story called What a Thought. It talks about female rage. This could be seen as a literary way to discuss why women kill. Why would women kill their husband when their life and marriage seemed perfect on the outside? All of these stories provide a certain filter. You could say an environment of the old American life, the evil and violence of humanity, the desperate women and housewives, the lost teenage girls. You can tell the author was an exceptionally smart person, but she was also grounded by her family, her gender, her health, and basically real life. She had so many talents, but she also felt stuck. She had marvelous attention to details because every character was so real and powerful. If you are into the stories behind a peaceful town, the dark side of human beings, I think this book provides the beauty. It reminds me of the beauty of storytelling. If you enjoy plot twists, dark and haunted stories, Shirley Jackson's work is one of the best choices, as she reminds me of why I love reading. The intellectual challenges and the world building that only a book and a great author could bring to you. It helped me rethink about women, society, collective life, and human beings. Why some people just do evil things? What were they thinking about? Daily life, if written properly, could be just as complicated as a maze. And if you have a particular interest about psychology or criminology, I hope maybe you should read the book. I think maybe her work can provide you a new angle towards understanding people. And most importantly, The stories are just fascinating to read because there were so many plot twists that you could never guess. Just by simply reading it, you can get this joyfulness of being hit by something unexpected. Jackson's work reminded me of the beauty of short stories, of books, of great stories, great storytellings, that something you can sink into. And it doesn't have to be a masterpiece or War and Peace, or well, of course War and Peace is great, but sometimes reading a short story like this, get a short book and finish it in an afternoon, it brings back the joyfulness that I had when reading detective stories as a kid. That's all for today's video. I bought a second book of Jackson. It's also a short story collection, and if there's something else that it came out as super interesting, I really want to do another video about it. And I'm traveling to Dublin this year. So eventually, after years of struggling and denying, I bought Ulysses and decided to give it a try. I have read James Joyce's Dubliners a few years ago, I think. And I won't say I love it. I like the environment that he built up in this book, and it fits my imagination of Dublin's life. But let's see how this huge project goes. I can't say I am absolutely excited because thick books never goes really well with me, but I do want to give it a try. I once heard a saying that you don't find the book, you don't go read the book finds you, and the right book will appear in your life during the right time, and you can only understand them after you experienced or been through some things. I hope this is the right time to read Ulysses. And same goes with In Search of Lost Time. Eventually, one day, I think, when the time comes, I will read it, and can't wait to tell everybody about how I felt about this book. And thank you for spending time with me. See you next week. Next week, I'm thinking about doing something heavier and hopefully as interesting or even more interesting than the ones we have done before, till now. Thank you for spending time with me. See you next week.